Lucy's Kitchen, it's Lucy's Kitchen. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.
And now that we've got your attention, let's cook. Hi there. Welcome to Lucy's Kitchen. I'm Lucy, and this is my kitchen. Today we're going to make Grandma's chicken and dumplings. Now, the grandma in this recipe is my mother-in-law, and she grew up in South Dakota. This dish is a true American heartland dish. My husband grew up on it. I know my mother-in-law grew up on it. And I'm guessing her mother grew up on it too. This dish is just so easy. And I'm guessing that when the wagon trains went to the West, they made chicken and dumplings along the way. Very easy, few ingredients, and it's always delicious and very comforting. This is the ultimate American heartland comfort food. Chicken and dumplings just has a few main ingredients. First of all, of course, here I am, the chicken. Well, the chicken can be a whole chicken that you cut up, can be a number of pieces of chicken that you buy at the store, your choice. I've got quite an assortment here. I've got legs, thighs, breasts, and all of them are bone in, skin on, because they get the most flavor if you leave the bones in and the skin on. So we want all that good gelatin and the wonderful flavors that you get from the chicken skin. So I'm going to just put it in my pot, and that's all you need to do is just throw it in your pot. No browning, nothing special is necessary. Just throw it in. Now I'm using an 8-quart stock pot, which is good for the amount of chicken I have. And depending on how much chicken you want to make, you might want a bigger pot or a smaller pot. This pot will work very nicely to cook the chicken and the vegetables and then have plenty of room to put the dumplings in. Although by that time it's going to be pretty crowded. So there's the breast. Well, actually, that's another thigh. Here's some breast and here's another breast. Okay, well, that is that. All right, next step, onions. So we've got 1 large onion or more, again, depending on how much chicken you have in your recipe for your household. And I would say actually this is a little bit more than 1 onion because I had an extra piece of an onion that I chopped up, so that's a good use of that. I've got 2 very large carrots that I cut up. Now these carrots are cut in fairly large chunks because this is going to cook for a while and we don't want them to get too mushy. I mean, they're going to get very soft, but we don't want them to, completely disintegrate. So carrots, just throw them in. And as I said, that was 2 large carrots. Now you could use 3 medium carrots or 4 small carrots, whatever works for you. In fact, if you wanted to, you could just use those little baby carrots that come in a little bag. That bag of carrots is probably the perfect amount to throw in here. This is about 2, maybe 3 stalks of celery, and it's just chopped or sliced. And then I've got a tablespoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. Just throw that on top. And now, this is awfully pretty. Look at this. So you can see it's pretty full. All right. Now, the one departure that I make from this recipe, and I'll explain that in a second, is I like to put in a bouquet garni. Obviously, out on the prairie, they probably didn't have the special spices and herbs that we have. Did they have peppercorns? Did they even have pepper? Who knows? It was hard to get. And people who lived out there might have had a cottage garden and they might have had some thyme growing, which they might have thrown in, or maybe not, or some parsley. And usually when I make broth, I just throw it in, but when you make broth, you strain everything out, and we're not going to do that. Everything's going to just stay in here. So I've got this little cheesecloth bag, and you can just use a piece of cheesecloth, or you can just tie them up together, although probably putting them in something is a good idea. And I've got some parsley, so I'm going to just, and I've got some fresh thyme that's mixed up here in the parsley. I'm going to stuff that in there. And here's more thyme. I've got a beautiful bay leaf. Now, you can throw this into the soup if you decide you don't want to do a bouquet garni. That's totally fine. You still might decide that you want to throw a little parsley in here. I'm sorry, a little bay leaf. I keep saying parsley, I mean bay leaf. And I've got a garlic clove that I've cut in half. And then I have some peppercorns and some cloves. Now we got about 10 peppercorns and 3 cloves. I'm going to throw them in there. Ooh, okay, now I'm going to just roll this up loosely and it has a little string on the end, and I'm going to take a string. Now if you're making this from a piece of cheesecloth, you can use a kitchen string, or you can make the cheesecloth into a little square and then just tie the ends together like a little hobo bundle. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm throwing it in, and before we do the dumplings, I'm going to take it out because we don't want this to end up on anybody's plate. So there we go. My final ingredient, water. Now, if you decide to make this dish and you don't want to use bone-in chicken, you can use boneless chicken. That's totally fine. It won't be quite as delicious. And you might want to use chicken broth, but we're going to make our own broth. That's exactly the benefit of this, is that we don't have to think about it. It's very economical. You saw some humble vegetables, just a few pieces of chicken, and this nice 2 quarts of water. Now, I'm going to just cover this by about 1 inch. So I may not need 2 quarts, I may need a little bit more. And again, it depends on your pot, but this recipe is sort of inexact. A lot depends on your pot, your ingredients, and okay, I think, yeah. Okay, I'm not going to make it too soupy. So, basically I used about 7 cups of water here. While the chicken is cooking, we may want to add more water, maybe not, I don't know, we'll see. We don't want it to go much below where it is in the end. Now we're going to put this on the stove, bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, and simmer it for an hour, and then I'll come back and show you how to make the dumplings. Welcome back. Well, I think you saw how easy it was to put all of this together, as I promised. Just chicken, vegetables, salt and pepper, water, and a little bouquet garni, which is nothing more than herbs that are tied together or put in a bundle. I put mine in a little cheesecloth bag for extra seasoning, which we're going to take out before we put in the dumplings. Now we're going to make the dumplings. This is the best step because the dumplings are one of the best parts. I know a lot of people are curious, what is a dumpling? Well, dumplings are basically biscuits that are floated on top of broth and brought to and steamed inside of the pot, as you'll see. And couldn't be easier, but some people are intimidated by the idea of biscuits. Don't be. We've got 2 cups of flour. I've got 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Put it in there. A teaspoon of salt. And I've got a fork, and I'm just going to mix all of that together so that it's so that the baking powder and the salt are well distributed inside of the flour. And then we're going to cut in a tablespoon of butter. Now that's the part that intimidates a few people. But once you get started, you realize it's really not that hard. Again, I'm going to use a fork. You can use a pastry cutter. You can use 2 knives. And you just kind of smush it down until it starts to mix in. You could even do this with your fingers. In fact, fingers, when you first start out, you might want to do it with your fingers so you can feel around for the butter and feel it turn into little tiny flakes. Now, you can use cold butter. You can use room temperature butter. For this particular thing, it doesn't matter too much. If you're making biscuits, you probably want cold butter. And then you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, it just looks like flour. And that's right. We're going to add some milk. But these are special, these are very special dumplings. These are parsley dumplings. And so we need to put in some parsley. And this is chopped parsley. Now, the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of parsley. I'm just going to estimate. I think I have about a half a cup here, so I'm just going to put in about half of it. Okay, and it's going to give these dumplings a beautiful green color. Not really green, but a little bit of green, some flecks. And then we mix that all in. Okay, now we're going to add the milk. And so just dribble the milk in. And what you want to do is you want this mixture to just barely come together. So I'm dribbling it, it's kind of spilling. In fact, I'm just going to pour it all in. I know 1 cup of milk is just what we want. So we'll just go ahead and stir it around until all of this is wet. As soon as it's wet, it's ready. So I'm going all the way to the bottom. I'm going to make sure that all the flour has been touched by the liquid. And okay, almost. There we go. Getting close. You don't want to handle it too much because you don't want them to become stiff, especially if you were making biscuits. But we aren't making biscuits today, so just ignore the biscuit advice. We'll make biscuits another day. Perfect. And that's it. Now we're going to go over to the stove and we're going to drop this into the boiling stew and make dumplings. Okay, here we are. So the stew's been cooking for an hour. I'm going to take the top off and, oh, I've had it covered this whole time and I've had it on low. It just looks beautiful. It's golden, it's rich, all the vegetables are kind of floating to the top. As I said earlier, we want to get the bouquet garni out, which I don't see, so I need my tongs. I'm going to poke around a little because it should be floating right on top. And where is it? Well, oh, there it is. It's right in the middle. It looks like a piece of chicken. What can I say? There we go. All right, now we're going to do the fun part. This is the part which everyone loves. Oh, I have to mention, earlier I checked it when it was just coming to a boil, and the chicken started to swell, so I had to add more water because when the chicken cooks, it does kind of swell up, which I forgot. And so I had to add about 2 more cups of water, and it's been simmering ever since. Now, we're going to put this in 1 spoonful at a time. And the nice thing about this is the dumplings help to thicken the stew a little bit. Normally, you might be, well, making a mess of these. I should probably do it with my fingers. There we go. Normally, you might, if you were making a real stew, you would have already put flour in there and so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and. But what happens with the dumplings is that they release a little bit of flour, and then it thickens up. So this becomes a stew and not a soup. And I'm going to turn the temperature up a little so we don't lose that boil. There we go. And they don't really have to be perfect, as you can see, but they are going to be delicious. I've also used an ice cream scooper. They're going to fill the whole top here. 1 more, and we're done. Now I'm going to cover it. I'm going to set my timer for 12 minutes, and I'll see you then. Well, our dumplings have been cooking for 12 minutes. I've been simmering them with the lid on, which means that they've been steaming in this delicious chicken stew. And take the lid off and check them. I'm sure they're done. Oh, isn't that something? They're beautiful. All right, I'm going to just poke. Oh, yeah. What you're looking for is firmness. And to be honest with you, if you're cooking them for 12 minutes, they're done. So now it's time to taste the whole thing, and I'll meet you over at the counter. Well, the dumplings have cooked for 12 minutes and they're perfect. The stew smells delicious and I can't wait to try it. You know, this is one of those recipes that I'm so happy I learned how to make. My mother-in-law is such a wonderful American cook, and my children make this recipe now. There's nothing more meaningful to me than to pass recipes from generation to generation. It's just such a blessing. And this dish, which really had to have gone back a couple of 100 years, it's just a marvelous, marvelous dish to know how to make and to teach your children and to enjoy being with your family and having something good to eat. And it's just wonderful, humble food, but it's fantastic. So let's give this a try. I'm going to go ahead and take some of this, even though it's lava hot. I'll take a dumpling. Of course, I'm going to want more than one dumpling. These are two gorgeous. Oh, there we go. All right. So there's my breast. I'm going to get some of these beautiful vegetables, little carrot. And while I'm getting the vegetables, I'm getting some of this fantastic broth. We're trying to get in here and get some more of that. Okay. All right. Wow. Super hot. All right. Well, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now I'm going to garnish it with a little parsley. There's never a time when I don't want a little parsley on one of my main courses. It just adds so much charm to it. Now I think I'm ready to taste this. So I'm going to cut a piece of the chicken, which is wonderfully moist. And okay, I'm going to put that there and let it cool off a little because this is lava hot. And as I said a minute ago, I'm going to taste this beautiful dumpling first. Okay, now it's kind of steaming, so I'm going to let it go. Wow. This could easily be a special occasion dish. You know, we tend to think of dishes like this as being more everyday food. Well, I think you could serve this to a company and they'd be very happy. Now, the chicken. Oh, it's so tender and moist. Mmm. So flavorful. This is a beautiful dish to serve anytime, whether it's to your family for an intimate, wonderful family dinner or to a group of friends. I think you will want to make this pretty often. Now, I think we've got a beautiful thing here. So I hope you'll give it a try. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and come back next time for more delicious recipes from my kitchen to yours.